Hi everyone, we're going to talk about the very last step of the mosaic process. So I have my finished mosaic here, and this has been drying for a long time. We need to let our glue dry for at least a few hours and preferably a day before we put the grout. This is the grouting process. Today I am using this kind of grout. It's called Borrada Universal, and this is the size of the gaps in between the tiles. This is a white powder that needs to be mixed with water to work. Some things that I need are the powdered grout, some water, some gloves, something to wipe off the grout like a towel or a sponge, and a dish of water. So let's get started. First I'm gonna put on some gloves. And what I want to do with this grout is I'm going to pour a little bit of water in and stir it with a spoon. And this is very, you don't want to add too much water right away. I just added a little bit. And it's actually a pretty nice consistency already. It should be kind of like the consistency of somewhere between peanut butter and yogurt. This is kind of like a thick yogurt. And we want to make sure that we don't have any clumps. So that's why I'm really mixing it nice and smoothly. And once we've mixed it with water, we need to use it right away. So from here, I'm going to take my spoon and I am going to scoop my grout. And I am actually just kind of scooping it straight onto my mosaic, like that. And then I'm going to start to kind of press the grout into the gaps. Okay. And I'm actually going to use all of this. So I'm just going to scrape it onto my artwork like this. And then using my spoon, I'm going to smoosh it all around to get it off of the surface and into the cracks. And this is where it starts to get a little bit messy. Got quite a bit here. And I've discovered I didn't mix enough grout. So what I'm going to do is scoop a little bit more and prepare a bit more grout. So I've got another bit of grout, adding just a little bit of water and stirring. It's really important that the container of grout, the bag of grout, does not get any water on it, because that will activate it. So I just put a little bit of water, and it is that nice smooth consistency again. And I'm going to add this to my working area. So here I didn't have any grout yet. And on the edges, like that. Okay. Now, once I have the grout kind of where I want it, I can also, if I have too much, I can scoop it and put it back in my bowl and other people can use it. Okay, now from here, I kind of like to just use my gloved hands to smoosh the grout into those cracks between the tiles and really make sure that it gets pressed into there. And if you see any bubbles, you want to make sure to, like I'm actually really pushing with my fingers to make sure that the grout lines have a lot of grout in them. The trickiest part is probably the edges. I'm going to put some grout on the edges so that there's kind of a nice smooth edge. And I'm just getting a bit more from the bowl as I do this, and I'm adding some grout to the sides with my fingers. Like that. And again, I'm really kind of smoothing it out. Okay. There we go. Okay, so I have grout pretty much everywhere that I need it, and I'm working to smooth it out and make sure there's not any bubbles forming. Now, if you use the gold tiles, you'll notice they're actually a little bit lower than the other colors, so makes it a little bit challenging, but it's okay. Okay, so now I have grout all over my artwork, and I'm going to use a paper towel, a dry paper towel, to wipe this off a little bit. And you can see my design is starting to appear a little bit more. Gonna get another one. And this is just a first kind of preliminary wipe. And like I said, this is a totally dry towel. Now you'll notice I have a hole, little air bubble, so I'm gonna put a little grout back in there. Once it's at this stage, we need to let it sit for a few minutes while the grout starts to dry before we can wipe the rest of the extra grout off. So we're gonna let this sit for about 5 minutes while the grout kind of hardens up a little bit before we wipe the rest of the grout off. And I'm going to tidy up these edges a little bit more right here. I'm adding a little bit more grout to this edge here. Just using my finger to kind of make a smooth edge here. Okay. Now, no grout ever goes in the sink. So it's really important that when we're cleaning, we need to throw anything that has grout in the trash. So like these, for example, need to go in the trash. And if you have other things you need to do with your hands, you can take these off, but you'll need to put them back on again for the very last wiping part. As we wait for this to dry a little bit, you can see that it is still very shiny and very wet looking. That is how we know that it still needs a little bit of drying time. We should not be wiping anymore while it's still this wet. However, what we do need to do is clean up our grout. So first, check if anybody else needs this grout. And then what we need to do is use our spoon to scoop any extra grout and throw it away in the trash. We want to reuse these bowls one more time. So we're going to scoop this into the trash. Scoop a little bit more. And then we're going to wipe the spoon off so we can use it again. So while we're cleaning all these things, we do not want to use the sink. We do not want to use water. We want to make sure that none of this grout goes in the sink. It will destroy the plumbing if any grout goes down the drain. So I've wiped this spoon, I've scraped this bowl. It's good enough for the next person to use in the next class. And in the meantime, we're gonna let this dry a little bit more. Okay, now I've been waiting about 20 minutes. Hopefully we will have time for this. Once the grout starts to look less shiny in between, you can get a slightly damp sponge. And by slightly damp, that means you put it in the water and you squeeze it. You squeeze it really, really well until the water comes back out of the sponge. And then you can use this slightly damp sponge to start wiping the grout off the tiles. And you don't want to do this too heavily because it will disturb the grout. So kind of going like that. Honestly, this is feeling like it needs a bit more time. I'm gonna get a dry towel and work on just wiping. I'm holding it nice and flat. It's not going to be perfect on the first day. You can return to it the next class. And I'm kind of folding this and finding a clean spot for every time I'm wiping it. And there we go. I also went in with a paper towel, just a dry paper towel, and I kind of wiped this area. You can also just use a gloved finger to kind of knock off excess grout from the wood part. But we want to have some grout on the side here, but it's okay if we don't have a lot. It's just to kind of seal off those edges and make it look a little more finished. So I'm going on the side, getting that extra grout off. If we have big chunks of grout, we definitely want to get those off before it cures completely, before it dries completely, because once it dries completely, this stuff is extremely permanent. So we want to make sure to make as many nice little adjustments as possible while we're still within the working range of the grout, meaning well before it's totally permanent. So kind of smoothing that out. Last side, you can see I still have some grout here, and I'm just kind of scraping it off, wiping the side. There we go. And then it's really important to let these dry completely flat. As I've mentioned a lot of times, when we're cleaning up, it's super important that we do not get grout in the sink. So I'm going to kind of rinse this out just in this bowl. Get it as clean as I can. And then what I'll do is I will let this water settle a little bit and then pour the water off the top into the sink and wipe the dust into the trash. Okay? With these, we want to be able to reuse them, so I just wiped it out with a paper towel. And with our mats that we're working on, like this, we can pick these up and dump all of the dust and kind of scrub them with our gloved hands, scrub all of this grout into the trash. So that's all really important parts of cleanup, so we're going to need to definitely spend some time cleaning up today. And lastly, we can take these off and get rid of them. Thanks.